Hey guys, Stephanie here with the Aeroponic Tower channel, and today I want to talk about all things Swiss chard and growing Swiss chard on your aeroponic tower. What are some tips and tricks, why we want to grow it, how to seed start, and all of those things. So today I have the garage doors open, and so if it's brighter on this side of the room, that's why. And our garage is south facing. And just a quick tip, if you have an aeroponic tower and you're going to move it from inside to outside, you need to harden your plants off just like you would seedlings that you start inside and then move to an outside garden. So I start to open the garage doors on these nice fall spring days and allow some natural sunlight onto the plant so I can start to slowly harden them off. I just wanted to mention that because the garage door is open and that's what I'm doing. And just an extra tip if you are planning on moving your tower outside in the spring. So this is Swiss chard, and Swiss chard is one of the easiest plants to grow. It is hard to fail growing Swiss chard on an aeroponic tower garden. It just loves the environment. It's super hardy. If I were to grow this plant in my outside gardens, it takes about 8 weeks for me to get them full grown in our environment here. And in an aeroponic tower, it only takes 4 to 6 weeks. So they grow fast, they grow abundantly, and they're really hard to kill, or they don't have any problems. I've never had a disease with a Swiss chard. I've never had bug problems with a Swiss chard. So it's an excellent crop to grow. Swiss chard is also a superfood. It's considered one of the healthiest veggies on the planet. It's very high in vitamin K, K1. So 1 cup cooked of Swiss chard would give you over 400% the amount of vitamin K1 that you need for daily consumption. It's also high in vitamin A, vitamin C, magnesium, really good for your bones, really good for heart health, really good for skin. So it's a superfood, and if you can add it to your diet, even a little bit every day, it can just really boost your overall health. So that's why I like to grow it. I like to juice it. I like to cook it. I'm gonna make some soup tonight, and I will put a ton of it in soups. You can saute it. It's just a really great tasting, diverse green that adds a ton of nutrition to your diet. And it's a bonus because it grows so easily on an aeroponic tower and cost me about 30 cents to grow. So very affordable way to get a lot of nutrient dense food into your body. Swiss chard is in the same family as beets. I think it was considered like a wild beet, but it doesn't produce the root like a beet would, but the greens are in the same family as spinach, just to give you an idea. And when you're growing Swiss chard aeroponically, and this would apply to beet greens as well, you don't have to follow the rule of letting the plant get big in the grow station before putting it in the tower. So in my seed starting videos and a lot of my videos, you'll hear me talk about waiting until your plant has roots on all 4 sides plus the bottom and is about 2.5 inches to 3 inches leaf size, and then you can put it in your tower. That is not the case with Swiss chard or beet greens. They are just super hardy. So as soon as they sprout and get to be about 1 inch, you can go ahead and put them in the tower. They also sprout. Swiss chard also sprouts very fast. So it's gonna sprout and be ready to go in the tower within 7 days. So just keep that in mind. I know I talk about waiting until your plants are pretty big size. That is not the case with Swiss chard. You can put it in. I've never had one have any problems going into the tower too early. When you're starting Swiss chard in your rock wool, I like to add 3 to 5 seeds. That is just the right amount that I have found work for my tower garden. Now a Swiss chard seed is a little bit different than other seeds. Most seeds are really tiny, and a Swiss chard seed is naturally pelleted. And what that means is if you were to buy a pelleted seed from a seed store, it's gonna take something like a tiny lettuce seed or a carrot seed. It's really common to do it for carrot seeds because they're so tiny. So they take the carrot seed and they cover it with a little bit of clay, and then when you're laying out your gardens, you're not having to deal with such tiny seeds and have to thin so much. The Swiss chard seed is naturally pelleted. So you're going to see the seed, it's hard, it's about the size of a BB, and inside of it is actually multiple Swiss chard seeds. Now the germination rate of all of those seeds inside that pelleted seed are not super great. So I typically plant 2 to 4 seeds and I get 2 to 4 plants. But if you were to plant 3 seeds and all of a sudden you've got 10 plants that pop up, just know that that's why, and you can thin them out. If you want to do microgreens, you could keep them 10, 20, and cut them when they're really small for baby green salads. But you don't want to do more than 3 or 4 plants. And the reason why is the stalks of the Swiss chard get really big and can cause a lot of problems and just get jammed up in your grow ports. Now, that being said, that happens when you allow your plants to stay in the tower too long. You can see here, mine are not very big, and I've eaten off of these quite a bit. And that is how I like to treat my Swiss chard, like most of the plants I talk about on the tower garden. So I grew these in the spring outside. I had them in a regular grow port, and I left them in there for a few months, and they get massive. The Swiss chard plant can get as tall as 2 feet depending on the variety. There are some varieties that are shorter. So just know it can get really big, and you want to be eating off of it a lot to keep it under control so that it's not shading out all the other plants on your tower. It matches really well with celery because they both tend to grow really bushy and straight up. So I have grown them on the top grow ports, not on these baby green sections, but on grow ports that were on the top, and alternated Swiss chard with celery, and that's a great combination. But just like celery, it's gonna get that massive base, especially the more you eat off of it. It's going to cause this to keep growing and growing, and that's what the base comes from. It comes from new leaves, and it can just get really big and jam up your tower. So just be mindful of that. I like to think of this as a 2-month turnaround plant, so that's the max age I let it get. And I don't like to harvest the whole thing, eat it, and wait for another full plant to grow back. I like to take 4 or 5 leaves off of a plant and eat those or add them to a juice. And so I will cut and come again, is what we like to call it, with a Swiss chard plant, but I'm still gonna harvest the whole thing at about 2 months and make sure I have a new plant that's growing somewhere else that will step in and be the larger plant on the tower. It's just how I like to do it because I don't like to have a very thick base of this jamming up my tower. The larger the root systems get of plants, the more water they consume. That's not really necessary if it's easy to start these seeds. And like I mentioned, it cost me about 30 cents to start this. I actually feel it takes more resources and causes more problems with the tower to leave plants like this maturing in your tower instead of just harvesting it at 2 months and making sure you have another one going so that you have another one you can harvest over and over and over again. So if you wanted to eat a whole head of Swiss chard every week, then you would want to start your seeds every single week. So every week, put your seeds in a rock wool and get it under a grow light and get it in the tower within 7 days, and that will help you have a continuous flow of Swiss chard. I tend to grow 4 or 5 plants at a time, and they're in all different stages, and I start Swiss chard every 2 weeks because I have multiple plants growing. Depending on how you want to eat this, that's how you want to time out your seed starting. I like to have Swiss chard every single day. If I'm gonna juice or make a smoothie or make a meal, I wanna be able to come out and harvest Swiss chard every day. I don't always do it. Some days I may take half this plant and then go 3 days without any because I do a big juicing batch or something like that. So however that works out for you, just know it turns over really fast, and it does better to go ahead and harvest it at some point versus letting it get massive and consuming and all-consuming in your tower. I've seen some amazing images of Swiss chard and pictures of tower gardens, and Swiss chard is the shining star. This one's a small plant because I eat off of it all the time, and it's pretty young. So just picturing like definitely 4 times the size of this on a tower, and it's great, and it shows the abundance you can get growing this on the tower, but it also isn't necessary. That's taking up a lot of space. It's shading out other plants. It's preventing you from growing something else. My thing is when I see a plant that big, is that tells me somebody's not eating enough Swiss chard, or they're growing too much, and maybe they could switch to a smaller variety or grow baby greens or something like that. We want our plants to look amazing on the tower, but these are not planters for beauty's sake. This is to grow food, in my opinion. So I like to just continually eat off my plants, which is why mine look a little bit smaller. So really that's it. You're gonna start 3 to 4 seeds in a rock wool. By 7 days, it's ready to go in the tower, maybe even sooner. Really, as soon as it starts to get those first leaves that pop out, you can stick it in the tower. It grows super easy. You can see this root system is pretty small. This plant's pretty young still too. I've been eating off of it regularly. In another month, this will continue to get large and I'll continue to eat off of it. Another month, I will harvest the whole thing, make a meal with it, and then I have another Swiss chard growing, ready to go. So this one's smaller. This one's only a couple weeks old. So this one's smaller, and it's 1, 2, 4 plants on here. I've harvested off of this one quite a bit, and how they start off, they've got much smaller leaves when they're younger, and then these start to get larger and larger and larger. And in that plant I showed you, this right here, this is still a small leaf. This will get twice the size. It could even get 3 times this size if you keep it in your tower long enough. So it's just a matter of what size you like to eat them. If I'm eating a salad, I like to eat these small greens. When I'm juicing, I like them to be larger. So I do like to let them get to that 2-month mark so I have more significant size leaves. I just want to make sure they don't get so big that they're shading out other things on my tower, or that the base is starting to get so robust that it's going to cause damage to the tower. So just things to look out for. Another trick I do is sometimes I will keep my small Swiss chard in the baby green section for quite a while, and that just gives them a nursery where they can start off, and then as they get bigger I will move them into a grow port. I use these baby green sections for that, for quite a few things, because it just allows me a space to grow some of those larger plants and let them get to a decent size before I move them into a grow port, because that grow port may be needed to grow something else at the time. So when one of the small ones gets so big that I need to move it to a grow port, then it just encourages me to harvest something like one of these cabbage that are close to the bottom here, and go ahead and move that Swiss chard to that grow port, and it just keeps the turnaround of food really fast, which is, which I mention all the time is my goal. We should be eating off of these towers every single day, so we're getting all that vitamin K, vitamin A, C, magnesium, bone health into our bodies every single day. So I hope these tips help you to grow some Swiss chard. Definitely grow Swiss chard on your aeroponic tower if you have one. If you are someone who juices or makes green smoothies every day, this is definitely a plant you want to be growing, just to add that superfood into those. And because it's so inexpensive and you get so much out of it when you grow it on an aeroponic tower, you can have, an entire green smoothie for 30 cents. And that's pretty amazing with today's economy. So I hope these tips help motivate you to grow some Swiss chard and give you some helpful tips. These are just my tips and tricks that I do. I know there's lots of different ways to grow food aeroponically in the ground. And I just like to share how I do things for anybody out there who may be looking to grow this kind of food year round as well. Have a great day, guys, and I'll see you on the next video.